Well, welcome all the participants to this panel. Thank you for being here. It's a few days into Davos. Many of you are tired already, but this is going to be a dynamic panel. Just to remind you, this is live streamed, so everything's on the record. So please do tweet out the wonderful insights you'll be hearing today. Maybe you want to use the hashtag WEF23, that's so they can keep track of the whole thing. The title of the session is Reshuffling Value Chains, and it's informed by the WEF's Navigating GVC Disruptions and the Platform for Shaping the Future of Advanced Manufacturing and Value Chains. I don't have to highlight to you in this audience the importance of the topic we're talking about today. It's all over the press. It's discussed at the highest levels in corporate sector and in the public sector. The resilience of value chains is something that is top of mind everywhere. 2022 saw the unwinding some of the early shocks to the supply chain, COVID in particular, but then delivered a whole new load of shocks. The Russian war in Ukraine, for example, spiking energy prices, food prices, rising interest rates, rising inflation, tight labor markets. It was almost a perfect storm, and we're seeing what's going forward. It's been clear in most people's mind that the way global value chains were arranged, say, in 2019, was not really fit for purpose, not for the 21st century. So there is this reshuffling going on. Now, the goal of this session is to shed light on the trends dominating this rewiring of GVCs and to help discuss public-private actions which could be taken to advance the rewiring. So this is a vast topic, but we only have 45 minutes, so we're going to do this in sort of three buckets. First, the current disruption context. I'm going to invite the panelists to contribute on each of that. Then we're going to do preparing the rewiring, or what is actually being done. And lastly, a call to action after hopefully we do some Q&A. Now, we have the perfect panel for this discussion today. I have actually been writing about global value chains for 20 years, but they've been doing global value chains for who knows how many years. So I'm looking very, very much forward to the insights of everybody. Let me just introduce them in the order I have them here. The Honorable Ashwini Vaishnaw, Minister of Railways, Minister of Communications, and Ministers of Electronics and Information Technology of India. That's not one ministry, that's three. Amazing. I guess you read fast. Then next we have His Highness Mr. Khalid Al Fali.
Excellency, not Highness.
His Excellency, sorry.
That's Khalid is fine too.
That's okay, His Excellency. And you are the Minister of Investment of Saudi Arabia. That's one of the things you do now, and I think we know you for a long time in the public figure, but now you're investment. We have Barbara Frei, from Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Officer of Industrial Automation at Schneider Electric. And Michael Süss, who's Chairman of the Board of Directors and Executive Chair of Oerlikon, Switzerland. And Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, Group Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of DP World at UAE. So, without any further introduction, let me just jump straight into it. The first kind of insights I want from you is the context. What are the main drivers of the latest developments of the reconfiguration? What are the main opportunities and challenge? And if I can start with you, Minister.
Thank you very much for having me here. The first point I would like to make is, unlike the past, where people were thinking of supply chains, people were thinking of, okay, I issue this RFQ and this is what I want, give me the lowest cost and I buy it. Things have changed. Today, people are looking for long-term partnerships where the suppliers and the buyers, both of them are looking at how do we create, how do we add more value, how do we add innovation, how do we make sure that the strengths of either of the two, whether it is supplier or the buyer, is fully utilized by both. So people are looking for win-win solutions, and that is where, my apologies, this is, People are looking for win-win solutions, and that is where a totally new paradigm is emerging. I think the recent disruptions have kind of accelerated this change, but this change was something which was waiting to happen.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Your Excellency.
thank you very much, Professor. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. I just want to expand the context a little bit and remember that the reason the world has advanced so much the last 3-4 decades is because of the efficiency of the global supply chains. We have billions of people, literally, who've come out of poverty in the South, East and West. Costs have come down. Accessibility to technologies and consumer products has all been enabled by very efficient supply chains and global value chains that have been unleashed by the end of the Cold War, the internet, the WTO, education rising around the world that has allowed us to complement each other and to bring economies of scale. The only thing I think is too much of a good thing could be a little bit bad. And I think we went after efficiency, after cost efficiency, to an extreme that we introduced the fragility that we read about in the newspaper. We ended up getting disruptions here and there after being so dependent on just-in-time delivery, whether we're a household, whether we're a company, or whether we're a country. And then with the geopolitical disruptions that we have seen recently, the tension, even pre-COVID, of course, COVID really got close to our hearts and minds and health and livelihood with the healthcare products that were constrained from shipping and export constraints that were imposed by some countries. And then it got elevated really bad with the Russian-Ukraine war, especially with the energy rising, this issue of reconfiguring, rejigging our global supply chain. Of course, coupled with this, and parallel to this, is this whole issue of industrial policy, and many countries that want to build an industrial policy for economic reasons, for development reasons, for job creation reasons. But all of these are converging together and putting this puzzle in front of us. How do we build resilience in our supply chain, but without losing the benefits of globalization that we have benefited from? And if we're going to re-engineer globalization into globalization 2.0, what is the design parameters to retain the wins, but add to it the resilience, sustainability, and agility that we need?
Thank you very much. I think I heard it was Satya Nadella says, we're not going back to 2019, but we're also not going back to 2020. So we need the new, as you mentioned, to adjust to all these things. Please. Barbara, please.
Yeah, I would say in Schneider Electric, we have this belief already since quite some time that you have really to empower locally and share globally. So if you really want to get a good strength in a market, you have to have strong people who have a lot of, let's say, means and also weapons to really conquer the market. And we started already in 2011 to establish a North American hub, a China hub, and a Europe hub. And in the beginning, it was very much focused more on commercial decisions. Then we started to add R&D, specifically also R&D for the market. And just recently, we were also adding India, because India has become the third largest market. And during COVID, it has proven to be a very powerful model, because within 2 days, we could say to the county presidents in those hubs, now you make the decision locally what you are going to do, what kind of measures are you going to take. Because you all knew during COVID time, every decision was very local. And because we had strong leaders, it was very easy for us to overcome this relatively difficult situation. So really convinced that empower locally and then share globally the knowledge, the IP is really a key thing here.
Thank you. So I think the WEF calls that the multi-local solution. And I asked them what that meant, and they said it's multiple local hubs. But anyway, multi-local sounds great.
Four hubs.
4 hubs. Okay, very good.
4 hubs.
Thank you very much. So it's redundancy in order to flexibility,
Correct.
and it's allowed you to...
Really speaking strong in the market. That's one of the because North America is different from China. It's different from Europe. So.
Thank you very much. Sultan, please. What are your thoughts on the context?
Well, as a company that we work on logistics, digitalization is very important. Transparency is very important for us to make decisions. When the COVID pandemic came, it really showed us how fragile the supply chain is. It couldn't take it. Even a ship stranded in Suez Canal disrupted everybody. And we started to launch and invest actually in many digital platforms to help us to overcome, to be able to reach our customers. And the lockdown in China also affected the world. In disrupting the supply chain, there were even shortage of containers. I mean, we have to react with untraditional way. I remember we came to the team and we told them, this is $60 million, go buy empty containers. You can't find them. They're all full of cargo, but they're stuck. And so that prompted people to talk again about nearshoring, producing where the customer wants them. The only concern we have, which disrupts our business, as businessmen, we can cope with anything and we can find a solution. The only thing that we cannot cope with is, which I'm concerned about, is this emergence of another Cold War between China and the United States. And that disrupts the market in a big way. As businessmen, we can deal with this. Today, we need to see a supply chain resilience continue. We need to see ability to supply cargo. So if someone is going to produce something locally in nearshoring to be faster, that's fine. But if the reason is we want to be in a protective way that I want to produce it, or I don't want to import from somebody else, then we lose the advantage of the benefit of having something produced better.
So the government, especially the idea of a fracturing world, is really a problem for supply chains. And
absolutely. But I believe that, I know there are many moves of becoming protection and applying protectionist policies. But at the end of the day, everybody will realize that cooperation and opening a trade is the best for everybody.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent we can say global value chains actually very much changed the benefits of trying to do it all yourself or trying to deny somebody something or another. It's really too intertwined. You're shooting yourself in the foot. I think that's something we can agree. Michael, please, CEO, tell us the context.
Doesn't matter, CEO, chairman, whatever.
Right.
We have a similar view on that than Schneider Electric has. As a truly global company, different size, tech, science-based materials, process engineering company, we are selling solutions to our customers, and we have to be global. And we have changed within that environment we are in now as well. We have the profit and loss responsibility in the regions. We have learned in COVID that the decisions in the regions, in all dimensions, can be taken shorter. For sure, you have still to keep a frame, because in the end, we pay a price tag. If you descale, if you cannot serve the world from one place, but you serve it from 4 places, 5 places, 10 places, you have a different complexity, you have different level of investments. And this hasn't started with COVID. This has started even with the former US administration. When I got overnight the taxation on powder materials, which we produced in Michigan and selling to China, on a 25%. Fortunately, we didn't have any competitor, so I could place it on the pricing. But for sure, what was the answer? We built a powder manufacturing in China. But now I have 2 investments, and I have to load them both. So the world wouldn't be where we are without the globalization in the last 35 years. So we have to thank all that countries which were driving that by their huge consumption of industrial goods and things. For companies like ours, it gets more complex now. In the past, you had to think about what the right markets and the right products to be in, and what's my competitive environment. Now you have to ask additionally, which is somehow a miracle with 8 billion people, where do I get the right workforce, the right trained workforce, the capable workforce, that we can execute and innovate. We haven't talked too much, I think, this time in Davos, at least in the panels I've been, about the power of innovation and how to develop world further on with innovation technology. And innovation is not, as long as the idea gets executed, it doesn't carry any value. And we have to create value as a company because, to remind you, states have no money. They can only redistribute the money industry and business is generating, either by taxated salaries or by direct taxations. If the economy is weak, the state is weak. And COVID made us a little bit misorientating. States have to solve everything. States have to give the right frame. And this is the fourth pillar. What as a company we have to consider if we want to improve value chain, which state gives you the long-lasting best environment? Long-lasting, why? Because typically if you place investments, it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years, depends which kind of investments you're doing. And it's not only, let's say, that people are asking what's going on with my investments in China or in the US. It's the same in Europe. If Europe is changing energy policy and you have just invested in an energy-intensive business, you have an issue. So we have to understand which environment, and here we have even to be more vocal and more outspoken from industry. We don't need governments who are doing now plan business. This was failing the last 100 years. We need governments who are giving the right frame and the right environment. Then business can fulfill goals governments or societies can place.
So the government sets the frame and
the frame where we can work in. Even they can set targets where the societies have interest in. But then please let it tech open, innovation open, and let the ones who are professional on that, let them do this.
Good.
Because
Thank
here
you.
we are better than any government.
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. Good. I should also point out that, this being Davos, it's not only the smartest people on the stage. We have, for example, the director of the World Customs Organization here, and we have several experts from supply chain. So I do want to leave some time for questions and answers from the audience. But can I get a little reaction to what we just heard? What I heard from many of you was that it's no longer just searching the lowest cost.
True.
And one of the big reactions is sourcing from multiple places. And that in essence, today, it's not just about seeking markets. You actually have to worry about your supply side. Now, is that true in all the sectors and all the regions? You think, each of you is kind of generalizing, of course, because you had 1 minute to talk about the world. But are there important distinctions that we've missed here?
No, but what you have to add is, in the end, we have to make profit.
Oh, yeah, and profits, right.
Because
okay.
we never talk about profit anymore because it's been seen as something which is by nature in any business.
No.
And whatever we increase in challenges, we cannot infinitely increase pricing.
Sure.
So we have to be very smart on one hand on execution, and the other hand, it's still we are not NGOs. We have to make money for our shareholders and stakeholders.
It's not a Boy Scout operation. Okay. But did we miss something? Is there important differences between sectors or regions? Is India, you're a minister in India, not one of the international supply guys here, but do you see the situation different in India, or how is this affecting India?
I would like to build upon the point that the gentleman made. Yes, governments must simply provide the framework, and after that, government should not intervene in the rest of the stuff. I think that's a very important point. And that's the policy that our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has really implemented over the last 8 years of the current government. And that has brought us very good results. For example, this iPhone 14 is today made in India. And its entire supply chain is today shifting to the country. Very clearly laid out policy, very clearly laid out ease of business, ease of doing business, very clear focus on responding proactively to any manufacturer who wants to manufacture in India. Whatever help we can give, we have to go out, be proactive, and make sure that the problems are solved. I think that's a very, very, very big fundamental difference between winners and losers. Second is the question about talent. I think talent will become a very important defining element in success of any value chain. As many of the speakers have said, innovation is going to be key, adding value is going to be key. It won't be simply supplying material. So our focus in India has been integrating talent with what the industry requires. If you have to retrain people, if you have to provide new skills, if you have to change our course curriculum, we are open to that. Whatever industry, whatever supply chain partners seek, we are open to fulfilling that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's what we had a little discussion before about whether it should say supply chains or value chains. And I think that brings out the point that we're really talking about much more than just buying and selling things. It's not just logistics. It's the whole package. And both innovation and talent are super important to making the whole thing work and making a profit, as Mike will insist. Your Excellency, do you have a reaction to the discussion? It seemed a great deal of agreement that we need to diversify. But for example, if you take the problems in the United States, it wasn't really a supply side, it was a demand shift, unexpected demand shift, where people went from buying services to goods and goods in malls into goods online, and all of a sudden the containers were in the wrong place. So is there some nuance in the reaction that you can see?
Well, I mentioned initially the element of agility. The agility of the supply chain will allow you to respond to these shifts. In that case, it was caused by the pandemic and the lockdown and the changes in consumer behavior. But going back to the re-engineering global supply chain, I agree with the term used by Barbara, that this is moving from a hub and spoke global value chain system to a multi-hub global value chain, global supply chain system, where each region will be able to play to its strengths, or each country will be able to play to its strengths, still working in an interconnected, interdependent way. Again, I repeat myself, we're not hopefully disrupting our interdependence and our globalized value chain system. In Saudi Arabia, for example, we have launched a global supply chain resilience initiative. We call it GISRI. It is intended not only to strengthen Saudi Arabia's resilience, that's a small part, the bigger part, but for Saudi Arabia to be a hub, to be part of that multi-hub system globally, playing to our strengths of access to materials, access to relationships within the region and beyond, access to the most sustainable energy mix going forward, leveraging access to the frame that Michael talked about, enabling policies that makes it easy to do business, manages the risk of doing business, attempts to the maximum extent possible to reduce the cost of doing business so that we can cycle back and create the profitability that Michael ended with, while staying open, keeping our country open for international investors, not only to come and invest, to access the Saudi, the regional, and the global markets, but to make Saudi Arabia a platform for a global supply chain. So we hope that we are not only advocating for building on the strengths of our existing, but also providing a very constructive solution, playing on our energy, stable policy, stable currency, which is pegged highest growing economy amongst the G20 in the past year, and creating an engine for growth while the rest of the world, unfortunately, is slowing down.
Thank you, thank you. Now, Barbara, in some sense, we've heard voices as if everything's going well. You know what to do, you're doing it, you have your multi-hubs. What are the big blockages? What are the problems you're facing that you'd highlight? Where are your frustrations in this rewiring?
Look, in principle, when we reshuffle the supply chain, it's also under the main objective to become more sustainable. And the more you purchase locally, the more sustainable you become. You have a closer relationship, you have better under control your supplier, but it's not that easy. So even in an economy like China, where we said, hey, to be less dependence of each other, we localize no more chips and whatever, it's not yet there. And this is what we face in many countries. So if I want to localize more, I might not have the component suppliers, I might not have also the access to energy in certain areas, I might not have the access also to the talents who can bring this. Of course, in big markets like India, China, that's not such a big issue. But it's very much, yeah, how is the supplier base also distributed in the world? And that's usually the bigger challenge. So we spend now today a lot of R&D resources qualifying suppliers. And in specific countries, we fail at least 3 to 4 times until we really have, together with the supplier, a new component qualified. But that's really crucial and well invested money from my point of view. And this is why industrial policy is so important. So if you want to do something in Saudi Arabia in certain areas, specifically electronics, you need also an environment which allows you then to have local players to work with.
Thank you very much. Now, Sultan, if I can ask you, you in some sense have a quite broad view of what's going on. And if you were going to say, how far have we got to actually doing this reshuffling? Between 0 and 100, where are we now? Are we up at 20? Or are we just, so how are things going? Or long way to go? Or?
As businessmen,
yeah.
I think we can fix our problems. Problem, we need the government to be off our back, honestly. But I will tell you something. I have a few things to say. The supply chain is very inefficient. And I can tell you, when we did a blockchain calculation, there is a waste of 40%. That means what you pay at the end of the day, from end to end, you paid 40% more for things you have not even provided services. Now,
such as what, finance and, I'm sorry?
No. There are other things, additional costs in the supply chain where you didn't need.
I see.
And I mean, for example, it's all digitalized, but they still charge you for using paper, which is not. This is one example. Another example, a ship comes to a port, there's another ship that's going to take the cargo immediately, and whoever organizes it will keep it for a few days in his warehouse and send you a bill. You don't need that service. There are many examples. But let me get back to one thing interesting. When you said this logistic problem, is it for a region or in different areas? A good example is China. China has the best, most modern port in the world. And they decided that we have no problem in the first mile. We have a problem in the last mile. And so they launched Belt and Road to fix the supply chain so that they can deliver. Today, China has a problem in the first mile. They can't get it out of the port. Okay? So you have to adapt, and they have to rethink this Belt and Road policy. When we see a problem as a company in logistics and ports, we try to find solutions, and we did solve problems that are facing people in delivery. For example, freight by air from the Far East. When it goes to Africa, it goes like a triangle. It goes Far East to Europe, then Europe to Africa, and then there to Latin America. Europe is the most expensive place for air freight. Why does it have to go through Europe? So we launched something called logistic passport, where we are convincing the shippers go in a straight line. So we selected Dubai or Jeddah, Addis Ababa, Ghana, and then another place in Latin America. That saved a lot of money and also increased the cargo and the time from 4 or 5 weeks to almost 7 days. But what we did, we went to all the freight operators and we told them what we want to do. And they have demand. They said, well, you tell Ethiopia, I need this to be faster, I need documentation to be digitalized, because digitalization is good, but it only works if everybody uses it. If the other doesn't use it, it doesn't work. Sometime in logistics, and especially the BCOs, the beneficiary cargo owners, they take the cost on its face, so they don't really challenge it. We established a dry port in Rwanda, which is Central Africa. The main cargo comes from Mombasa or Dar es Salaam. A container freight is $1,500 from China to Mombasa or Dar es Salaam. To take it by road, it takes 2 weeks, rail or road, to Kigali in Rwanda, and the cost is between $5,000 to $7,000, and everybody's paying. So what we did, we brought a truck driver we know in Dubai, and I told him, go rent a truck and tell me why this is costing this. The end result is, first of all, you need 2 weeks. He said the driver sits in each very village a few days. That doesn't need. But the cost went from 5,000 or 7,000 to 2,800, and it's coming down. And the whole delivery became 1 day. Okay? So we need, if we are in supply chain, we need to challenge these costs. We need to test them. We can't take things on its face.
Sure. Push on
because
the
you'll be
costs.
surprised.
Perfect, thank you. So, Michael, if I can, feel free to ignore my question and say something you think that the audience wants to hear. That's actually, if you've ever listened to what people ask in Davos and what the answer is, often unrelated. But you're not here to listen to my questions, you're here to listen to their insights. But I do have one thing that is interesting, or at least I think might be interesting, is we've talked about what you might say averages or things we do, but not so much about uncertainty. And I guess in this business, whether it's short or long matters, but it also matters whether it's predictable or not. And I wonder if you see a change in the predictability of global value chains and how they're moving around. Michael, is that?
The world at all is much less predictable as it was when we had the iron fence. When this was falling down in the 90s, the world got less predictable because we got multipolar. We got different hemispheres. We got growth areas and all that. So to answer this, companies, societies have to deal with the unpredictable. And they take the predictable as a luxury good, but deal with the unpredictable. When we talk here about value chain, we shouldn't talk only about supply chain. Value chain for me is as well how we can, and there are a lot of questions around that, but how we can create more value in different societies. For me, I have a mantra. The modern industrial society is the best society for human beings because it's proven that this society creates value in a wide range. All other societies, if you take tourism or agriculture or natural resources-based ones, the layer of accessible wealth for a wide area of people is by far smaller. So what we have to do, we have to use our technologies, taking this multipolar world and bring the jobs to the people and not bring the people to the jobs. So there will be still migration. America wasn't built without migration. Germany after Second World War, 50s, the Italian, 60s, the Greece, and Balkan, 70s, the Turkey. So without migration, German economy wouldn't have never evolved that way. But it was a migration for work. Now we have a migration for refugees. If you want to stop that, we have to bring stability. If you want to bring stability, you have to bring money, education, and a sense to do something. So we have to bring work. We can use a multi-local, and we discussed that in 2019 already. There will be much more local to local and less local to global, but it will still be in a global environment. If we give up the global view, we are dead. We're really shrinking. But we have to manage this global view with a benefit more for local and use the specifics. As Barbara and some have mentioned, the specifics are totally different. If we go to Saudi, they have money like hell, and they have the willingness to invest that. They create you an infrastructure, which is fantastic. If you go to Europe, they want to save the world. They don't ask about if they give you a good digital environment. It's not there. So when you talk about frame, it's not only political stability. It's about what are you providing. In the past, it was roads, railroads, airports. Now it's a digital environment, data centers, energy supply. And then the business goes where the environment is the best. Because here I have to come back. We have the obligation to make money because we have the obligation to pay taxes and finance societies.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly, it's all, I mean, business doesn't work if it's all nonprofits.
But we have to bring the work to the people.
Right.
And we have with a lot of new technologies, additive manufacturing, for example.
Yeah.
We can do work much more decentralized. It's a very young industry. It still burns more money than it generates. But on midterm, and midterm is 5-10 years, it makes money. And it's fast growing. And a lot of specifications you cannot even achieve without that. It will be bad for logistics because we send only powder and daters and not all these good goods which are produced somewhere.
Right.
But then you will adapt to that. And I think this is important. Industry, business has always adopted. We have to create the environment that we keep that speed on adoption. And if you go back, it's not the Chinese miracle only. Take the 19th century.
Yeah.
What kind of growth you have generated
So let's
because
leave
of
the 19th
technology.
century for a moment. I want to ask some questions. There's incredibly smart, switched-on people in the audience. I want to leave a little time for that. But thank you very much for rounding it out and bringing in inclusion and as an important. We haven't talked about environment yet, but anyways, that maybe that'll come up in the questions. So we have time for one or two questions from the audience. If you raise your hands, please say who you are. You could here, please. And if appropriate, direct your question to one or more panelists.
Hello.
That works, yes, it's working.
Mr. Vaishnav, firstly, many congratulations for the way India handled the whole process in the last 3 years. I guess what I was looking for, looking at the explosive growth which is coming ahead, and we heard some figures yesterday, going from a $3 trillion economy to a $26 trillion economy over the next sort of 20-odd years. How do you deal with the issues of self-reliance, creating jobs for people, yet protecting the value chain in a democracy? And sort of a generic theme, and does the answer vary between developed markets, developing markets, and say frontier markets? Just relying on your own experience, because India in many ways is not just one society, but a multiple society.
A very simple question, just how do we protect democracy? Take whatever part of that you like, and remember we're in the supply chain sessions.
I think it would require one full hour of discussion. Very profound question. Thank you for this question. What's important is we as governments have to look at what our local needs are, what our society needs. We also cannot ignore what the global demands are. For example, today even scope 3 emissions are very important, right? It's very important. Climate change is such a big factor in everything that we do. In India, we have today 42% of our energy, of our power generation capacity coming from non-fossil fuels. If you look at the top 10 economies of the world, it will be very difficult to find out too many 3 or 4 countries which have 42% coming from non-fossil fuels. So to your question, I would like to say that we have to look at our local needs. We have to balance that with what the global needs are and come with that right balance, which can be very different in different economies. It cannot be one size that fits all.
Thank you. I just point out that in India, explosive growth is your problem, but most parts of the world, explosive growth is not the problem. It's encouraging growth that's the problem. But thank you very much for the question. Could you pass the mic to the gentleman across the hall, please? Just
Thank you. Arunabha Ghosh, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. I want to pick up on the theme of value chains, but bring it to energy, because just like production of goods can become more decentralized, as you were saying, the future of the energy system is also going to be a lot more decentralized. Rather than shipping huge volumes of molecules of hydrocarbon, electrons will be produced more in a distributed way, or even, green hydrogen can be produced in many different ways in different hydrogen hubs. So the question for the panel, I'm happy for anyone to take it on, is in this evolving global economy, where does energy value chain fit in? How do you see that evolving, and what are the threats or opportunities that arise as a result?
Thank you very much. Please.
Well, first of all, I agree with you. Energy is going to be more distributed. The sun is distributed, and the planet is blessed with it. Wind, hydro, other forms of energy. And there comes which geography, which jurisdiction is able to combine its endowment of energy with the other factors that we talked about today, whether it's technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, talent development, a regulatory system, the frame that governments provide, as well as the connectivity with other hubs and other centers of excellence by which you can analyze value chains from end to end. Indeed, not linearly, but in a circular way, because we're going to be more and more in a circular economy. And that jurisdiction that gives you this, gives you a record of being able to execute projects at scale and provide stability for investment, returns for investments, I think are the ones that are going to be able to attract capital, attract talent. Talent is also moving around the world, as we know, not just capital. So where is it going to converge? And I think it's going to converge where you have abundance of stable, predictable policies, including energy policies, infrastructure, physical and digital, as well as the material input matters, which should not be ignored, which could be insourced from the country, but equally important through relationships with friendly countries.
Thank you very much. Well, we're just getting warmed up with the discussion. We need another an hour and a half, but we don't have it. So we now have to go to the closing round where I'm going to ask each panelist, and this time I'm going to do it in reverse order, if that's okay. What is the one step, the one action that this community that can be taken to accelerate the transition or remove roadblocks or encourage cooperation that isn't already happening? Can I start with you, Michael?
Yeah, to get that in a half a minute is a little difficult, but I would say we have to stay focused on execution, and we have to be very, very clear about what our targets are. And our targets is creating value. That's the topic of this session. Infrastructure is an enabler. We create some value with infrastructure, but only on a good infrastructure we can create then the society which is doing all these goods and new ideas and fulfilling new demands. And this is then creating that value which provides you the amount of money for social systems, for education, for all that stuff which makes the planet finally really more resilient for anything. And this is our obligation. And we have to stay focused on that, and everybody has to do that what it can do best. And business and industry can do the best business industry, interacting closely with politics and societies, because politician is, let's say, the outspoken wish of a society, typically. And here we have to interact. And this we do here in Davos, and it's a good platform for that.
Thank you very much for that. Sultan, please, one step.
Yes. One of the issues that concerns people always is the protectionism and some of these Cold War issues which disrupt our business. You have somebody importing something from China, and then half the way, somebody decided to raise this. One of the things that is important is World Trade Organization is supposed to fix this. How come they cannot fix it? I mean, they should be in play. This is where we need them to add at least discipline, where countries cannot just go and suddenly hit somebody with either more custom duty or more procedure that to make it difficult, which disrupts trade and costs money.
Thanks.
The other thing I believe is, and we have somebody from the World Customs, is that I wish that the customs systems are digital in all the countries, because a lot of time it's very difficult. When you have a digitalized system, nobody can abuse it.
If I can just point out, this is the second point, but
yes.
Anyways, so embargoes and export restraints and digitization to Desirata. Barbara, please.
So I really would like to put back again the sustainability aspect in the whole value chain. And to have a sustainable value chain, you need transparency. You need transparency what's going on. And there is this first mover coalition where 50 companies committed to provide purchasing visibility to low carbon material coming from hard to abide material. And we need more. We need more companies joining exactly these kind of coalitions.
Join the sustainability movement.
Correct,
Great.
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Your Highness. Sorry, Your Excellency. I keep giving everybody a promotion. You're going to be a prime minister pretty soon. Sorry.
So,
Shooting.
my fear is that we look at, again, in a binary linear way. Is it cost or resilience? Doubling up on insourcing and multiple sources. I think it's a triangle of cost, resilience, and sustainability in the environment, and trying to triangulate between these three factors. Of course, with innovation, at the heart of it to find the right balance, relationships, complementarity between government and the private sector and across borders and across countries. And on that note, I would just say, let's watch out for protectionism. Protectionism is not the solution to the few issues that are serious, but yet we should not reverse history.
Thank you very much. And you
I'll
have
just say
the last
three
one,
words: trust and long-term partnerships.
please. Trust and long-term partnership. And believe it or not, the only thing I get graded on is ending on time, and we are exactly at the end of our time. So please put your hands together for this fantastic, insightful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.